Right, so it finally happened. Well, at least the hardcore of the Insulate Britain protesters have been jailed for somewhere between 2 and 4 months. But obviously the takeaway from that is that there are going to be 9 of these protesters that spend their Christmas behind bars. And I sound quite sort of jovial and pleased about that. And it's not that I like to see people go to prison, but I think that it was quite an important outcome, really. And let me sort of explain why. These people are criminals, okay, but because they don't fit the normal sort of criminal stereotype, we have been involved a lot more in their stories and their cases emotionally. I read one headline today in the Daily Mail which was saying that one of them was scared of going to prison. Now, prison in my mind has 4 main purposes. As a deterrent, as a punishment for crime committed, as a form of rehabilitation, so those people who are maybe career criminals or those who've just gone down a bad path have an opportunity to come out the other end with some extra skills, with some extra education, and in a better position to live a legal lifestyle. And the 4th reason, of course, is to protect the public from people who are potentially dangerous. Now, if we take these 4 factors, okay, these hardcore protesters for Insulate Britain, who, in case you're not familiar with what they've been doing, obviously, if you're not from the UK, they've been sitting in the middle of roads and in some cases gluing themselves to the M25, which is the big road here that runs around the outside of London, is possibly the most hideous and busy of roads we have here in this country. So they are being a bit of a pain, stopping people from going about their daily business, people from going to work, tradesmen going to jobs, people taking their kids to school, and of course the ones that people like to pick upon in the press because it makes a more sensationalist story, ambulances taking people to hospital, people missing important operations and stuff like that. But by and large, it's just being a bit of a pain in the arse to, the vast majority of the sort of London-dwelling British public. So, taking my 4 answers, or my 4 reasons for prison. Deterrent. Well, these 9 people are the minority of the people who have been protesting, but by jailing 9 of them, you are acting as a deterrent for the rest of them, who may think they want to go back out and continue to protest in the same dangerous way. Punishment, yes, of course they should be punished. And I'll come on to a little bit more about that in a moment. Thirdly, rehabilitation. Now, I'm not sure this is quite so important in this instance, but maybe it will give them a little bit of time a little bit of thinking time, shall we say. And finally, to protect the public from dangerous criminals. Now, dangerous criminal sounds like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it, in this instance? It sounds a little bit over the top because we think of axe-wielding maniacs and murderers and serial killers and real dangerous people. And yes, they don't fit that stereotype, of course, and they're not as violently dangerous to the British public as maybe a serial killer or such, which is why they're getting a much reduced sentence, of course. But they are a danger to themselves and they are a danger to the public. There have been, sadly, reports in the news of people who have died as an indirect result of their protest. People who haven't been able to get to hospital in time. People who have missed the death of loved ones because they haven't been able to get to their bedside in time for their passing. Okay, so there are some very tragic stories that are the result of these people's actions. And not only that, they are in a very direct way a danger to themselves. They are putting themselves in the middle of one of the busiest roads, if not the busiest road in the UK, which obviously is a massive danger to themselves, but there's also a danger to motorists who may not well be expecting people to walk out in front of them, during rush hour on the M25. So they are a danger to the public. And this is a very, very active way of keeping them out of harm's way for their own good and for the good of others. So why do I think they deserve to be punished? We do here in the UK have a very well established right to peaceful protest. And I think actually in some way, the very first time that they decided to don their high vises, get their banners and go and sit in the middle of the road, there is an argument that there may have been an element of naivety in this. They may have believed this was a perfectly legal and, logical form of peaceful protest. And that's fine. And actually, it was widely reported and the police came in for a lot of criticism amongst the first protests because they were very, very softly with these protesters. Most of the time, the protesters were allowed to continue their protest. They were protected from angry motorists by the police, and the police were actually there ensuring that these protesters were comfortable and were hydrated and weren't actually in any direct danger from either vehicles or from angry people trying to go about their business. This sort of slowly subsided with protest after protest after protest until eventually the police actually started removing the protesters from the road and trying to prevent them from taking part in these protests in the first place. There was an awful lot of patience by the police and actually almost a bit of patience from the general public. But this faded significantly over time, and the police had to step in to protect the protesters, but also to allow those law-abiding citizens who are just trying to get on with their daily business to go to work, take the kids to school, attend appointments, attend jobs, all the rest of it, right? And eventually it got so bad and they kept dragging these guys out and girls out the road and telling them not to protest. And eventually they had to take out an injunction. And bear in mind, these protests have been going on for weeks and months at this point. They had to take out an injunction to say, look, you have to stop doing this. And if you don't stop doing this, we have every right to arrest you, to put you on trial, and potentially to send you to prison. Now, vast majority of criminals don't get this many warnings, this many chances, but they continued their protests in the same format and the same, basically the same method of protest, by putting themselves in harm's way, by putting motorists in harm's way, and by disrupting law-abiding citizens. And look what happened. For once, the British justice system carried through on its threat, and these 9 people are now spending Christmas behind bars. And I say that's the right decision. Yes, these aren't, axe-wielding murderers. They're not bank robbers. But they are people who are dangerous. And they are people who are given so many chances to not stop their cause, not stop protesting, but stop protesting in such a dangerous and disruptive way. I will actively support the right to peaceful protest. I think it's important that we have the right to speak out for what we believe in. But this wasn't the way to go about it. And this hopefully sends out a message to those people who think that this intensely disruptive behaviour, which mainly affects people who have absolutely nothing to do with the cause. Do you think the people in Westminster really give a toss? They don't. All you're doing is impacting the lives of people who may otherwise have had some element of sympathy with your cause. Also important to mention that I think in many ways their case is a moot point. They are protesting that they want all British homes insulated by, should have done my research, can't remember the year, but they want all British homes insulated in order to become more energy efficient and, for us to basically be greener. But if you look, the government, as much as I will criticise them for many things, have already made pledges to insulate houses and to make them more energy efficient over the next coming years. So you've got yourself arrested and imprisoned and missing Christmas for something that didn't need to be fought for. There's already methods in place to save energy and to make us more efficient and less polluting and more green. So hopefully this will act as a deterrent to people who want to go out there and put themselves and others in harm's way in the interests of a cause they believe in. But I do support people's right to protest. I do support maybe making us more energy efficient, although I do have significant misgivings with the green agenda, and I'm sure I'll talk about it again in the future. And I do feel sorry, of course, for the families and particularly the children who may have to be without a parent or a grandparent this Christmas because of their incarceration. However, I believe it's the right decision, and hopefully we'll see an end to this needless and incessant disruption of law-abiding citizens, taxpayers, and decent, upstanding people's lives. Take care, stay safe and sane.